It seems like people are always saying that the world isn't what it used to be. And they're right. It really isn't. It is totally different than what it used to be. I wouldn't doubt it. But they imply that it's worse, that things used to be good, and then they started to really go downhill. And yet, that really isn't true, is it? I've heard people say the pyramids were amazing, and it sure is a shame that we don't build great things like the pyramids anymore. Or maybe we couldn't even build the pyramids today if we tried. And I do admit that they are a feat of amazing engineering for their time. I'm not even going to put any effort into trying to disprove the belief that perhaps the aliens built them. If they did, that's amazing. And yet, we also are building spaceships. We've created all sorts of technological marvels in the modern world. There's no way you can say that the things that we've built today in modern times are less impressive than the things that the ancients built thousands of years ago. You can't look at the skyline of New York City, or just as an example, the enormous sphere that was just built in Las Vegas, that is essentially an enormous, completely round television screen that's so big 18,000 people can sit inside it. You can't look at all of the modern marvels of the world and say, honestly, that some enormous, admittedly amazing ancient monuments like the Parthenon or the pyramids prove that the ancients had something that we've lost. Admittedly, they had amazing attributes. I'm not going to say that's not true. But do we sometimes do ourselves injustice by being too hard on the present to really put things in perspective? To remember that life is really, really good today. And we have amazing accomplishments surrounding us every day to show for it. Amazing advancements in healthcare. Amazing advancements in the field of human liberty. We've gone from a time when slavery was a commonplace thing that was just a normal, integrated portion of everyday life. And we've moved into a time when most people have enough liberty that they're able to sit in the comfort of their own private homes with access to the entire world on social media, criticizing everything they think is wrong with the world. It's been said that community is something that we used to have in times past, and we've lost it today. And yet, it's also been said that community is something that becomes necessary in times of struggle and difficulty. While in times of peace and prosperity, there's less of a sense of community because there's fewer disasters that force people to work together just to survive. So if we're able to thrive without needing to come together to share bits of moldy bread amongst each other, isn't that a good thing? Now, it seems like there's people on both sides of two extremes always. Some people who are avid traditionalists who want to say we should go back to the way things were. And other people who are avid progressives saying that we should abandon all of the old ways for something new and superior. We have liberals and conservatives in politics. We have country people and city people, the young and the old, and everyone seems to identify with the reverse end of a spectrum, and they look at other people who are on the other end as being the bad guys, the enemy, the people who have it wrong. But the truth is somewhere in the middle. And yet, I've noticed something that I really don't care for at all. It's a spirit that's appeared in countless different ways and forms throughout my life. And it's been this notion that we're living in the end times. Now, I was raised in a Christian environment, and so we were taught at that time that the Antichrist would rise, that the tales of Revelation, tales of apocalyptic judgment from God, would bring about the end of human life as we knew it. And as with all end times tales, it was always implied that we're living in the end times now, that we're at the end of the end times. So much and so that perhaps you don't need to worry about paying off your credit cards because Jesus will return in the clouds and take away all of the cares of the world before you ever get around to needing to worry about that collection agency. But that sense of end times doesn't just apply to a religious situation. It also applies to things like liberals who want to point out that the conservatives have it all wrong, and if their political leader of choice doesn't get to win the next election, then the country is going to be morbidly disturbed and ruined, irrevocably altered, to the point where the nation is basically lost. It's that notion that everything is on some sort of an extreme axis, and we have to say that right now things are bad, and they're so bad that we really probably can't afford to focus on good things. And we can focus on good things later if we get our way, but right now we just have to admit that life is terrible, that life is bad, that we're living at the turning point right before everything goes south. Maybe it's a doom and gloom prepper that is out to tell you that inflation is going to get out of control and the price of a box of macaroni and cheese is going to go through the roof to the point where it's worth more than an ounce of pure gold. And so you need to run down to the store and pick up a bunch of canned goods now because the hyperinflation is going to kick in tomorrow afternoon, quite possibly. Or is the person saying you need to FOMO in or out of something in the stock market or a crypto or something because you know the whole thing is going to go boom or bust and it's going to happen right around the corner. You can't afford to stop and think about it. You can't afford to stop and smell the roses because we're living in the end times. We're living right on the edge of the precipice. We're looking off of the cliff, and you don't have time to see good in life because you've got to get on the bandwagon of understanding how bad things really are and how important it is for our side to win and all that kind of stuff. But the truth is that life isn't bad. Sometimes there's adversity we all must face, and sometimes in the pursuit of our duties we must pay a sacrifice which is significant and high. And yet, as a general whole, life is good. That's the truth. Because for each one of us that grows old, there are new lives that are beginning and exploring freshly. For everything that is lost, something new is gained. For everything that dies, something new is grown. Life is not a thing of misery and lamentation and regret. It's not a thing that should be mourned as a precious treasure that's on the brink of being lost, like the great Atlantis, the day before it plunges into the sea, never again to rise. We can live our lives in gratitude and thanks, and good peace with all. We can appreciate tradition while also acknowledging that it is our duty not to be so rigid that we are constrained by it, to also embrace the spirit of progress, to acknowledge that even if things seem foreign to our experience, we can still respect them in all their curiosity and diversity. We don't have to throw out tradition in the name of progress, and we don't need to be closed-minded to progress because we fear it. We don't need to fear either of those things. And we do need to embrace truth, because if you're taking refuge in the notion that the world is going to end just because you aren't mature enough to acknowledge in your heart that your life won't last forever, then maybe what you need is a conference hour with yourself. A conference hour which doesn't have any excuses in it. And maybe a conference hour that doesn't have any answers either. Just the courage to acknowledge what you know, which is humbly how little you know. And yet, to not willfully deceive yourself either. You see, when I look back on those childhood experiences of being told about how the world was going to end soon, I think what really stands out about those experiences was the fact that when we were talking about how the world is not going to be around much longer, and the Lord is going to return in the sky, and then we're going to live forever, there wasn't any need in that context to take responsibility for the truths of our lives. We didn't need to acknowledge our economic situation. We didn't need to think about what we were going to do about real world problems that we were currently facing, because we could just say, ultimately, it's all in God's hands. That's kind of a cop-out, isn't it? Isn't it better to say I'm going to stand and face the truth exactly as it is, including all of the truths I do not know and understand, and all the things I don't have control over. And in all of its fear and glory and disappointment, I will stand with my flag flying high at the top of the masthead into the unknown. I will do so with honor and dignity and respect. Isn't that a better way to face life and to face death than just jumping on your favorite doom and gloom bandwagon in hopes that you can distract yourself from your own mortality by putting down and disgracing all who live? It is a beautiful world, and so I close on this thought. An old friend of mine who has since passed away. He was an old man. We would spend a lot of time drinking coffee together. And he said many times, life has loveliness to sell. Count it. He said, buy it and never count the costs. Till next time. Thank you for watching.